He was young, brash, and armed. Billy Clanton rode with the Cowboys, the most feared outlaw gang in Arizona territory. But in a matter of seconds, his life would be cut short in one of the most infamous gunfights in American history. The gunfight at the OK Corral. Was he a cold-blooded criminal or just a kid caught in a deadly feud between lawmen and outlaws? The truth is more complicated than legend would have you believe. In this video, we dig deep into the life of Billy Clanton, the volatile world of Tombstone, and the violent clash that sealed his fate.
William Harrison Clanton, better known as Billy Clanton, was part of a well-known ranching family in Cochise County, Arizona Territory during the early 1880s. Alongside his father, Newman Haynes Clanton, often referred to as Old Man Clanton, and his older brother Ike Clanton, Billy helped manage a cattle operation near the rapidly growing silver mining town of Tombstone. The Clantons were associated with a group commonly referred to as the Cowboys, a loosely organized network of men involved in various frontier enterprises, some legitimate, others questionable. The Cowboys were widely believed to be involved in cross-border cattle rustling, bringing livestock up from Mexico, and at times acquiring cattle from local American ranchers through dubious means. In an era when documentation and branding were inconsistent, accusations of theft were often hard to prove but frequently voiced. This group came into frequent conflict with the Earp brothers, Wyatt, Virgil, and Morgan, who had taken on roles as lawmen in Tombstone. The Earps represented a faction in town that supported strict enforcement of the law and a vision of order that clashed with the more freewheeling, independent mindset of the Cowboys. Tensions between the two sides escalated over time, fueled by political, economic, and personal disputes. Billy Clanton, still in his late teens or early 20s during these events, found himself increasingly drawn into the rivalry. Although some accounts describe him as a capable horseman and loyal to his family, he also carried the burden of being identified with a group under scrutiny for criminal activities. The volatile situation finally boiled over on October 26, 1881. On that morning, Billy Clanton, along with Tom and Frank McClory, brothers from another ranching family, were present in Tombstone when a confrontation occurred between them and the Earps, joined by Doc Holliday. Within moments, the disagreement erupted into what became known as the gunfight at the OK Corral. Billy and the McClory brothers did not survive the encounter. His brother Ike, who was not armed at the time, fled the scene and later accused the Earps of wrongdoing. Following the incident, legal proceedings were initiated. Ike Clanton filed murder charges against the Earp brothers and Holliday. The hearing, led by Judge Wells Spicer, examined the circumstances in great detail. After weeks of testimony, the Earps were found to have acted within the scope of their authority as law enforcement officers, and no criminal charges were upheld against them. Billy Clanton's life and death have since become part of the fabric of Old West legend. Though he never took part in another recorded shootout, and his exact role remains debated, his story reflects the broader tensions of the time, between law and disorder, town and frontier, and differing ideas of justice on the American frontier. Billy Clanton's childhood life. Billy Clanton was born in Hamilton County, Texas, during a time of westward expansion and post-Civil War uncertainty. He was one of 7 children born to Newman Haynes Clanton and his wife Mariah Sexton Kelso Clanton. His siblings included John Wesley, Joseph Isaac, commonly known as Ike, Phineas Fay, Alonzo Peter, Mary Elise, and Esther Ann. The Clanton family, like many others on the American frontier, frequently relocated in search of better opportunities. Billy's father, Newman, often referred to as Old Man Clanton, led a varied working life. Over the years, he took on roles as a day laborer, tried his luck in the California gold fields, and farmed when resources allowed. Eventually, he turned to cattle ranching, which became his primary occupation by the late 1870s in the Arizona Territory. In 1851, prior to Billy's birth, Newman moved the family from Texas to Adams County, Illinois. This relocation likely reflected the push for stability and the desire to find fertile land or employment in a more settled region. However, the post-Civil War years saw the Clantons head further west once again, this time to California, joining thousands of other families drawn by the promise of prosperity and open land. Tragedy struck the family in 1866 when Mariah, Billy's mother, passed away. Her death left Newman to raise their children in a frontier environment that was often unpredictable and demanding. This loss, along with the family's continued migration, shaped the younger Clantons' upbringing. They were raised in a world where adaptability and loyalty to family were vital. By the time the Clantons established themselves in southeastern Arizona in the late 1870s, the region was becoming a hotbed of economic activity due to mining, ranching, and cross-border trade. Billy grew up in this climate, surrounded by complex cultural tensions and a developing economy that often blurred the line between legal enterprise and outlaw reputation. Moved to Arizona. In 1873, the Clanton family relocated to the Arizona Territory, settling first in Pima County. As the region opened up to settlers, the family continued moving in search of opportunity, eventually establishing themselves near the settlement of Charleston. This small town, located along the San Pedro River, would soon play a significant role in the story of the American Southwest. By 1877, Newman Haynes Clanton, Billy's father, founded what became known as the Clanton Ranch. The ranch was situated in a strategic location near the Mexican border, where cattle could be driven up from the south and sold or traded locally. During this same period, a significant turning point occurred. Prospector Ed Schieffelin discovered rich silver deposits in the hills east of the San Pedro River in an area known as Goose Flats. This discovery triggered a dramatic transformation of the region. Practically overnight, the mining town of Tombstone sprang to life just 15 miles from the Clanton Ranch. Within 2 years, Tombstone's population skyrocketed from a few dozen prospectors to over 7,000 residents, becoming one of the fastest growing towns in the American West. The Clantons quickly became familiar faces in the bustling town. Billy and his older brother Ike often visited Tombstone, particularly on weekends, to take part in the social and commercial life of the growing community. They frequently conducted business connected to the family ranch, sometimes partnering with the McClory brothers, Tom and Frank, who also operated nearby. While Billy was considered quieter and more reserved, Ike Clanton gained a reputation in Tombstone that was far less favorable. Many townspeople viewed him as loud, boastful, and prone to drinking heavily, qualities that often led to conflicts or strained relationships with others in the area. These character traits would later contribute to the Clantons' increasing tensions with the town's lawmen and other prominent figures. Still, for a time, the Clantons were part of the expanding frontier economy, navigating the blurred lines between ranching, trading, and surviving in a territory where official authority was still taking root and where alliances could shift with little warning. Livestock thefts. Shortly after Wyatt Earp arrived in Tombstone in December of 1879, he suffered a personal loss. One of his favorite horses went missing. In the Arizona Territory, where a horse was both a prized possession and a vital tool for transportation, such a disappearance was no small matter. Word eventually circulated back to Wyatt that the Clantons, who operated a ranch near Charleston, may have been in possession of the animal. For nearly a year, rumors persisted that Wyatt's horse had ended up in the hands of the Clanton family. While such accusations were common on the frontier, where livestock frequently changed ownership, both legally and otherwise, Earp continued to keep an ear to the ground. Finally, in late 1880, Wyatt received a reliable tip. The horse had been spotted near the Clanton Ranch in Charleston. Without delay, he rode out to investigate. Upon arriving, he witnessed his missing horse being led through the street and then placed in a corral. Rather than confront anyone directly at that moment, Wyatt calmly stabled his own horse at a nearby facility and sent a telegram to his brother James Earp back in Tombstone. Wyatt requested that James send proof of ownership, official documentation identifying the horse as his. Later that evening, their younger brother Warren Earp delivered the papers to Charleston. Wyatt would later recount the event during a court hearing, offering insight into how the situation unfolded. According to his testimony, while he waited for the documents to arrive, Billy Clanton became aware that Wyatt was in town and attempted to remove the horse from the corral. Wyatt reportedly stopped him, informing Billy that the animal was his and would remain in the corral until the ownership papers could be reviewed. When the papers finally arrived that night, Billy didn't press the matter. In fact, according to Wyatt's statement, Billy turned the horse over voluntarily before any formal legal action was taken. The moment ended on a note that would later seem ironic. Billy allegedly asked Wyatt with a touch of sarcasm if he had any more horses he might misplace. Though the encounter didn't escalate into anything further at the time, it reflected the growing unease between the Earp brothers and the Clantons. What may have seemed like a minor dispute over a horse was part of a much larger web of tension, suspicion, and clashing values between frontier lawmen and cattle ranchers in a rapidly changing territory. In the summer of 1879, a violent incident took place just across the border in northern Sonora, Mexico. A group of unidentified raiders attacked a rural homestead, resulting in the deaths of several residents. While such cross-border conflicts were not uncommon during this turbulent period, this particular episode heightened tensions between American settlers and Mexican authorities. In response, a detachment of Mexican rurales, mounted police, led by Commandant Francisco Neri, crossed the international border into Arizona territory in pursuit of those believed responsible. This act was not sanctioned by the U.S. government and was therefore considered an unauthorized incursion. However, their effort to track down the culprits was met with resistance. The rurales were ambushed during their mission, though exact details remain unclear. Years later, the outlaw Johnny Ringo reportedly claimed that Newman Haynes Clanton, better known as Old Man Clanton, along with his sons Ike and Billy, were involved in the original attack in Sonora. It's worth noting that such accusations, especially in the oral history of the Old West, often blurred the lines between truth, rumor, and self-interest. No official charges were ever brought against the Clantons, and definitive evidence remains elusive. On August 13, 1881, tragedy struck the Clanton family when Old Man Clanton was killed in what is widely believed to have been a retaliatory ambush in Guadalupe Canyon, near the Arizona-Mexico border. The attackers were presumed to be Mexican rurales, possibly seeking justice for the events in Sonora. This ambush remains a subject of debate among historians, some of whom point to the dangers of frontier trade and the risks faced by those who operated in contested border regions. Following their father's death, Ike and Billy Clanton continued managing the family ranch. Life in Cochise County was marked by both opportunity and ongoing uncertainty, especially as tensions rose between various factions, lawmen, miners, ranchers, and outlaw groups. On October 25, 1881, Ike and Billy, along with their associates Tom and Frank McClory, traveled to Tombstone. According to their own account, they had been working to round up cattle that had scattered after a recent Apache raid. A common hazard for ranchers in southeastern Arizona at the time, what unfolded over the next 24 hours would become one of the most debated episodes in Western history. The exact sequence of events leading up to the famous confrontation near the OK Corral varies depending on the source. What is clear, however, is that a combination of rising tensions, long-standing rivalries, and escalating misunderstandings set the stage for a deadly encounter that would come to define the legacy of the Clantons and Tombstone itself. Shooting in Tombstone. Throughout the early 1880s, tensions between the Clanton family and the Earp brothers steadily escalated. Ike Clanton, in particular, had numerous verbal altercations with Wyatt Earp and their close associate, Doc Holliday. These confrontations were fueled by long-standing distrust, political differences, and personal grievances, factors that had been simmering in Tombstone for months. On the morning of October 26, 1881, circumstances reached a critical point. Billy Clanton and his brother Ike were joined by their friends Billy Claiborne and the McClory brothers, Tom and Frank, at the Dexter Corral, a livery stable on the edge of town. All 5 men were known to be affiliated with the Cowboys, a loosely organized group involved in cattle trading and at times suspected of extra-legal activities. When word spread that the group was armed, what was known locally as being heeled, concerned citizens alerted the Earp brothers, who were serving in various law enforcement roles at the time. The law in Tombstone prohibited the carrying of weapons within town limits, and the Earps believed it was their duty to enforce this ordinance. Intent on upholding the law, Virgil Earp, who was acting as Tombstone's city marshal, decided to confront the group and request they surrender their weapons. He was joined by his brothers Wyatt and Morgan, as well as Doc Holliday. The 4 men made their way toward the lot beside C.S. Fly's photography studio, where the Cowboys were said to be gathered. What happened next has been debated ever since. According to some accounts, the Cowboys resisted disarmament. Others insist that the Earps were the aggressors, perhaps acting on personal motives rather than official duty. Regardless of which version one believes, a sudden exchange of gunfire erupted. The brief but deadly encounter became known to history as the gunfight at the OK Corral, even though it technically occurred in a nearby vacant lot. The first moments of the confrontation were chaotic. Ike Clanton and Billy Claiborne, both unarmed or only lightly armed by some reports, fled the scene as soon as shots rang out. Billy Clanton, however, stayed and engaged in the firefight. Witnesses later said he fought with determination, reportedly firing every round from his revolver before being struck. When the dust settled, 3 men lay fatally wounded: Billy Clanton, Tom McClory, and Frank McClory. On the opposing side, Doc Holliday and both Morgan and Virgil Earp sustained injuries, though all 3 survived. The event sparked immediate controversy, with multiple eyewitnesses giving conflicting statements about who drew first and whether the law had been justly carried out. Newspaper accounts, political rivalries, and courtroom hearings only added to the uncertainty. To this day, the gunfight at the OK Corral remains one of the most dissected episodes in the history of the American West, a moment shaped as much by myth and memory as by fact. In the aftermath of the shootout near the OK Corral, Tombstone found itself deeply divided. The town's population, made up of ranchers, miners, merchants, and gamblers, held differing loyalties. Some stood behind the Earps, viewing them as necessary enforcers of law and order in a turbulent boomtown. Others sympathized with the Clantons and the McClorys, believing they had been unfairly targeted or that personal grudges had influenced the deadly outcome. This divide reflected broader tensions in the region, political and economic rivalries between rural cattlemen and urban business interests, between Democrats and Republicans, and between established settlers and recent arrivals, fed the flames of public opinion. The shootout became more than just a confrontation. It became a symbol of the struggle for control over the Arizona frontier. The funeral that followed for Billy Clanton, Tom McClory, and Frank McClory was an extraordinary event in Tombstone's short but dramatic history. More than 300 mourners followed the procession to Boot Hill Cemetery, while an estimated 2,000 onlookers lined the streets, a remarkable turnout given the town's size at the time. It was the largest public funeral Tombstone had seen, underscoring how profoundly the event had shaken the community. All 3 men were laid to rest in Boot Hill, a burial ground that would later become famous for the number of individuals interred there whose lives ended suddenly or tragically. The graves of the Cowboys remain there to this day, marked with simple inscriptions that continue to draw visitors curious about the legends of the Old West. In the weeks that followed, emotions remained high. William McClory, the older brother of Frank and Tom, arrived from Texas determined to seek legal accountability. As a practicing attorney, he became an outspoken advocate for his brothers and Billy Clanton, asserting they had been wrongfully killed. During the preliminary hearing that followed the shootout, William tried to bring formal charges against the Earps and Doc Holliday. In a letter he wrote during the proceedings, William McClory claimed that his two brothers, along with Billy Clanton, had been planning to travel to Fort Worth, Texas, to visit him after selling off some of their livestock. This narrative painted a picture of three young men engaged in ordinary business and personal plans, a contrast to the image of lawless gunmen that had taken hold in some corners of the press. The legal hearings that followed, as well as the continued public debate, ensured that the legacy of the shootout would linger for years to come, not only in Tombstone, but throughout the American West, in popular culture. Over the years, Billy Clanton has been portrayed in numerous films and television series, a reflection of his enduring place in the mythology of the American Old West. Though his life was brief, his role in the events surrounding the famous gunfight in Tombstone left a lasting impression on popular culture. One of the earliest portrayals of Billy appeared in the 1942 film Tombstone, The Town Too Tough to Die, where he was played by actor James Ferrara. Just a few years later, in 1946, John Ireland brought the character to life in My Darling Clementine, a classic Hollywood retelling of the Tombstone legend directed by John Ford. In the 1957 film Gunfight at the OK Corral, a dramatized version of the famous shootout, Billy was portrayed by a young Dennis Hopper, who captured the restless energy and youthful defiance often associated with the character. Around the same time, Billy was also featured in the popular TV series The Life and Legend of Wyatt Earp, 1957 to 1960, with actors Ralph Reed and Gary Gray each taking turns in the role across different episodes. Billy even found his way into British television, appearing in the 1966 Doctor Who serial titled The Gunfighters. In this unique blend of science fiction and Western lore, actor David Cole played Billy in a story that introduced the Tombstone saga to a new audience. The 1971 film Doc, a revisionist take on the Wyatt Earp story, included Billy Clanton as a supporting character, portrayed by Bruce M. Fisher. 2 decades later, he was featured prominently in 2 major Hollywood productions that reignited public interest in the Tombstone story. In Tombstone, 1993, a stylish and action-driven interpretation of the event, Billy was portrayed by Thomas Hayden Church. The following year in Wyatt Earp, 1994, actor Gabriel Folse took on the role in Kevin Costner's more expansive and reflective version of the legend. Billy's presence has even extended into modern television. In the supernatural-themed series Wynonna Earp, 2020, which reimagines the descendants of Western figures, Billy Clanton was played by actor Billy Brigg, further highlighting how the Clantons' legacy continues to evolve across genres and generations. Beyond film and television, Billy Clanton has also been memorialized in music. He is mentioned in The Ballad of Boot Hill, a haunting song by Johnny Cash that reflects on the fates of those buried in the infamous Tombstone Cemetery. The song underscores the sense of tragedy and inevitability that surrounds the young cowboy's story. These portrayals, spanning nearly 8 decades, illustrate how Billy Clanton has become a fixture in the American imagination, not simply as a historical figure, but as a symbol of the complex, often romanticized era known as the Old West. Billy Clanton stepped into history as a young man caught in the storm of a rapidly changing frontier, where law and lawlessness were often just a matter of perspective. Whether remembered as a reckless cowboy or a misunderstood rancher's son, his death at the OK Corral became part of one of the most iconic moments in Western lore. In the end, Billy's life and its sudden end remains a symbol of the volatile mix of ambition, justice, and personal rivalry that defined the American Old West. A single gunfight may have taken his life, but it also secured his name and legend.
Please like and share if you find the video content interesting and useful. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and comment below so as not to miss the upcoming interesting videos. Thanks for watching.